My name is Morna Gerard and I'm interviewing Kate Woeber for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is June 14th and the interview is taking place in the Kirkwood neighbourhood in Atlanta, Georgia. So Kate, easy question to start with. What year were you born and where were you born?
1970 and in Buffalo, New York.
And can you describe your family's political leanings?
Yeah, well, my mom was a Democrat and my dad was a Republican.
How did that go?
I think that they probably avoided the conversation more often than not. My mom died when I was young, and when my dad remarried, he remarried somebody who, when they were dating, or maybe after they were married, they were actually reading together Atlas Shrugged. So she was more a Republican, who's since become a lot more moderate. But my dad, he still thinks Russia's right, and he still loves to talk about politics. And
how's that for you?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty maddening for my sisters and I too, because my dad is conservative, my mom is moderate to liberal. I have a couple of brothers who are a little bit more conservative leaning. My sisters are at least as liberal as I am. And we got my dad a Wall Street Journal subscription for Christmas, like I think so many families did, just to give him a better news source, but maybe still acceptable to him. But he'll bring up the political conversations, and usually I end up putting the kibosh on it because I really love and admire my dad, and I don't want to stop feeling that way about him.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
This time has been really very difficult for family.
Very, yeah.
So before going any further, what's your profession?
I'm a midwife.
And
a nurse midwife.
Where do you work?
Well, I teach midwifery at Emory University in Atlanta, and I work as a midwife at Northside Hospital. That's just a couple days a month because the teaching is my full-time job. And Northside is the busiest hospital for births in the country for I don't know how many years, and there are a ton of midwives there.
What made you want to become a midwife?
I had a degree in human development and family studies that was mostly not that employable. Or not employable in a way that I wanted to be employed. And I started reading about midwives, and I met a couple of midwives, spent a little time in labor and delivery, actually not having any babies. The babies would not come out the days that I was trying to see, but I thought it was, it covered both the human development and the family studies, and I thought as far as doing something to make a difference in the health of families and happiness of families, to kind of start at this event or this life period of the reproductive life period. Partly I just think it's interesting and amazing and awesome, but partly I see it as a way to improve the world, save the world through better birth. Yeah.
You're working for the common good,
Yes,
for sure.
I think so.
So when did you move down south?
I moved down for midwifery school. I went to school in Emory, so that was in '97. So I've actually been here as long as I've lived up north.
And where around Atlanta do you live?
I live in Smyrna, which is a suburb sort of northwest.
Okay. What political party do you support?
I generally vote with the Democrats, not always, but
What would make you not vote with them?
just a specific person.
Okay.
If it's somebody who has integrity and generally seems informed and motivated to do good things, then I'll vote for that person regardless of party.
Did you vote the last election?
Yeah. Yes.
We'll get back to that.
Okay.
Have you been involved in any political activities in the past?
You mean like campaigning?
Campaigning or just activist activities,
Mhm.
you know, protesting or lobbying, anything like that?
Not really, no. I mean, I've written my letters, and I generally am not confrontational enough or aggressive enough to be down at the Capitol on a regular basis, but I'll send emails or letters once in a while when there's something that's really pressing a button.
Are there certain issues that tend to press buttons for you?
Well, healthcare. It's since I work in a school of nursing, it's kind of pretty easy to be informed about healthcare. So generally, that would be the most common thing.
So you know, you talked a little bit about your family, you know, Republican, Democrat. Were they ever active politically?
No, not like in the way that you described. I don't know if my dad, he may donate money or something like that. But.
And have you ever been to a march before? The
No.
one in January?
No, this is the first one.
Can you tell me which march you attended?
I went to Washington. Yeah.
Why did you choose to go to DC?
Well, as soon as Trump was elected, I was talking to my friend Molly. We were college roommates, and she lives in DC. And actually, we were talking about meeting up with other friends in Florida and hanging out on the beach and drinking our way through the inauguration. And then, like the day after the election, I think we heard something about the Women's March, and it was like, oh no, if we're gonna spend a weekend away from our lives, that's where we need to be. So, and she lives in DC, so we could stay with her. And
Fantastic.
yeah.
Can you talk to me about, I know this is hard, think back to the night of the election. Can you talk me through, you know, what you experienced?
Just disbelief and shock and horror. I mean, I don't want to sound dramatic, but it was so unexpected. And to watch the poll numbers roll in and the predictions, you know, going up to like 80%, 90%, and it was getting so late at night, and it was like, oh my God, I can't believe that people have done this.
And how did you feel the next day?
Kind of sick. I felt kind of sick, and just so gosh, you know, my kids go to a school where they're the minority. They're a racial minority, and we're probably an economic minority. You know, we're more privileged than most of the people at my kids' school. And I thought, my kids are going to school today, and I mean, they have some kids in their classes who, not very many, they have a few kids who have had to learn English at school. And my kids are old enough that the kids now know English, but I remember in kindergarten, you know, kids who didn't hardly know English. And there are probably some undocumented families who my kids spend their days with. And I thought, they're going off to school, how do I explain this to them? You know, and how are they going to talk about this at school, and what's going to happen? I just, like, the first two things I thought of were, you know, there goes the Constitution and there goes the environment, and therefore, you know, the future is just up in the air.
You said that you were trying to think about what, you know, how you talk to your kids about this. What did you say?
I think I told them that, you know, that Donald Trump won, and that I wasn't happy about it, and that there would be some people at school who probably would be happy about it, and some people who would be really worried about it because of the way it might affect their families, and to just be sensitive if people are talking about it.
Just good advice.
That's the best I can do, right?
So
It's
young.
about, it's all I can come up with, because I don't know any better myself what to do.
Well,
You know?
it was new territory for everyone.
Yeah.
So you decided very quickly you wanted to go to DC to the march.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your planning and who you plan to go with, how you plan to get there?
Yeah, well, I love a road trip, and I don't have a lot of time off, but there's some flexibility with my work schedule, and my husband's, he had to actually take off work. He was working weekend nights at the time, and he had to take off work so that I could go. And my husband, which I didn't mention before, is conservative, and he did not vote for Donald Trump, and he would not have voted for Donald Trump, but it took him too long to decide that. But he was willing to let me go, and he didn't ask too many questions because we don't talk about that. It's better not to talk about that. But he did get the time off, and there were two of my college roommates who were going to meet. Well, one who lived there and another who was coming from Miami, the one whose beach we were going to go crash on. And a third roommate who couldn't make it. And then I knew that Nicole would probably want to go, or I thought that she might be interested in going, and so I asked if she wanted to go too. It would be a fun road trip, and just, I feel like both of us we work together a lot. We coordinate the same courses and spend probably too much time together. Never too much time together. Sorry, Nicole. I thought it'd be more fun if she came too, and I thought she might want to go, so we planned a road trip.
What day did you leave?
I don't remember.
Did you go on the Thursday or the Friday?
It was on. So
Or
it was on Saturday.
It was on Saturday morning.
Then we went on Friday. Well, we went on Thursday, and then we stayed overnight in Virginia at a friend's house, and then got there on Friday, and then the march was on Saturday.
Where did you stay in DC?
At my friend Molly's house. She lives actually in DC, pretty close to the zoo. So I think it was maybe like a 5 or 6 mile walk to the march. The subways were, the metro is really full, so.
So you were around DC on the day of the inauguration. Did you watch any of that on TV?
Oh gosh, no, but it was crazy there. We got there, so we drove to Virginia, and then we took a train into DC and then we could walk to my friend's house from the train. And so we stopped so we were in the train station at the time that the inauguration let out, like right when the inauguration let out. And it was crazy because there were all these people with these red baseball hats on. And, this was actually sort of funny. This may be not relevant for this, but we were having lunch when we got there, and it was packed. There were people everywhere, and we were hungry, so there was like, I'm vegetarian, but I wanted a burger because it was that kind of day, and so there was this burger place, and there was a long line, and like people, and somebody there said, well, if you'll sit with other people, then you can come in right away. And I was like, well, yeah, well, it's a community. So they sat us with these people who were like, Nicole, she will never forgive me probably, but they were, I don't think they had red hats on, but I'm positive that they were there for the inauguration, not for the march. And so it was really pretty funny.
Did you actually talk to them?
Oh, we did. We were right across the table from them, and we talked about our families and backgrounds a little bit. We didn't talk about politics. I kind of wanted to, actually. Just be like, do you know how much you're going to suffer under this administration? But I didn't. I didn't want to burst their bubble. And
It was their day.
well, I also know there's really not a lot of persuasion going on either way, so we just ate lunch.
Did you watch the inauguration you didn't watch on TV?
I didn't watch any of it, no.
Um,
I saw, excerpts of the speech after the fact and in the news, but I can't stand to listen to the man, so, no.
I think there was a lot of people who actively did not watch.
Yeah. Part of you is kind of morbidly curious, but then it also makes you kind of just feel terrible to hear it. So.
When you think about everybody coming together in DC for this huge march. There were so many different reasons why people were there. What was your main reason that were like, this is why I'm going to the march?
Can I have two main reasons?
You can have two. You can have as many as you want.
One was that this is a women's thing, and you know, I spend most of my time advocating for women in my career and life, and just rejecting everything that Trump has ever had to do with women, and just his reprehensible behavior in general. I have a son who has it's called a stereotypy. It's like a tic, and when Trump made fun of the reporter, I just, you know, everything about the man is just so awful. So it was in protest also. But also, like, I think the thing that made me want to go to the march instead of, you know, to start with that kind of activism, and usually I wouldn't do a march, was that I remember reading textbooks as a kid and looking at the pictures of people saluting Hitler, and I thought, like, I know there are so many people here, and the odds of being in any photograph in a textbook are minimal, but if my kids are gonna see people, like, I want them to know that I cared about this enough to protest on their behalf, and that that I felt like I was on the right side of history. So, and not even that I personally would be in a photo, because that's crazy, there were so many people there, but just to have the photo of the masses of people, I thought was just important for the future generations to know that people tried to resist.
Yeah. Did you bring a sign with you?
No, I wish I did now. I didn't have a sign, and I didn't have a pink hat either.
What did you think of the pink hats?
At first I thought they were silly, and then it's, you know, solidarity, it's community, and I think it's great.
I guess there was no way you could pretend that it was another march with all these pink hats. It was like,
Yeah.
it was all...
No, it
It's
is
all
what
us.
it is. Mm-hmm. Clear message.
Although you didn't take a sign, did you see any signs that you just thought were really great that stuck out?
Oh, so many great signs. I don't have that kind of memory right now where I can come up with one, but so many great signs. You know, the ones with the planets and the ones about, you know, women's rights are human rights.
Did you join in with the chanting?
Not a lot. I really was there, like, as just part of the mass, you know?
But tell me then, you got up on the day of the march.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got from where you were to the march and where you were within the sort of rally area.
We walked there. We went down to see if we could take the metro to, is that what you call it in DC, the metro? I can't remember what you call it. We tried to take that, but it was going to be a wait forever. It was packed, which was really exciting just to be down there, and like, it was people, you know, against the glass in the train, and it would come and go and nobody could get on because it was so full, and it was awesome. But it was going to take forever to get there, so we just walked. So I don't know how, you know, I think it's a 5 or 6 mile walk, and I have no idea where we ended up in the mob. I know that we were standing for a very long time in the middle of it, or somewhere sandwiched between. It was wall to wall people everywhere you look, and we couldn't really hear. The cell phone wouldn't really work. To, like, you know, people said you could hear over if you called in, or, you know, we didn't have that, but it didn't matter. Like, none of that mattered. It was just being there and being part of that community.
Did you, first of all, did you have a plan if you were going to get split up?
I don't think we did. Yeah. We just stayed close, but...
Was there a point at which, as you're walking toward the rally, that you thought, this is big, this is
I didn't have anything to compare it to, but everybody's walking in the same direction. And then you get there, and there are just people everywhere, and pink hats everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are pink hats and signs, and women and men. And I had kind of wished that I brought my daughter ahead of time, since I hadn't been to a march. I just didn't know like safety and getting separated and stuff. I didn't, or my son. I think he would have also really liked being there, but yeah, all you could see were people.
And you said you saw women and men. Did you see people of color? Like LGBTQ folks?
Everybody. It was everybody of every stripe. To the extent that like it just wasn't, you just don't even think about. It's like everybody's represented who's not wearing a red hat.
Can you talk about the mood of the people around you?
That's an interesting question, because people, I think when they ask you about the march, they kind of expect you to say like it was fantastic, it was so encouraging, and I mean I didn't really feel that way. It was fantastic to have all of those people who understood each other and were willing to show up and go through the trouble to get there and make it happen. That is extremely encouraging. But I felt sort of dutiful about it. And I think that, there's a lot of standing around and waiting, and then the march, it wasn't about walking or, it wasn't, I know that there were, big shots and stars up on stage, and like, I couldn't have cared less. It wasn't about that either. It was just kind of showing up. And I felt, I don't know if that describes an atmosphere, but it's just kind of badass. Like it's like your duty to be there and make sure that you're counted.
So righteousness.
Yeah, righteousness. It was, some people weren't like down in the dumps, but they weren't partying. It wasn't that, it wasn't violent or angry either. It was just down to business.
Well, you brought up safety and you brought up like anger and stuff, so I want to ask two different questions. One of them is, were you aware of a police presence?
Yeah, there were police.
And how did you feel that the police were interacting with the crowd?
Well, it was peaceful, so they didn't have a hard job. I felt like it was important that they were there. As much to, I guess, protect the crowd as control the crowd. But they weren't much of a factor because they didn't need to be.
Because you were also.
Yeah, because people were just down to business. It wasn't drama, it was just business.
The other question I was going to ask is, did you see any protesters who were protesting the Women's March?
If I did, I ignored them. Yeah, wasn't really aware.
Well, that's a good
point. Or if I was at the time, I blocked it from my memory.
This is kind of an odd question. What did you take to eat throughout the day? Did you make sure you were hydrated and fed?
Mm-hmm. I got some power bars. No, we're pretty much starving by the end. We brought like nothing because we walked and we had to carry a bunch of stuff. I don't think I had a water bottle. No, we didn't really bring much. Totally unprepared. And it's not like they were selling things, Or it's not like a race where you pick up water along the way. It's not like that. So, no, we got something to eat afterwards, and that was it.
At any time throughout the day, did you feel emotional about what you were doing?
Yeah.
Like what moments kind of like brought that out to you?
I think just standing in the middle of the crowd, and when we started walking, and sometimes the crowd would just like the march wasn't supposed to go through the mall. but it wasn't moving. Like, there was nowhere for people to go, so people went through the mall. And then you could kind of spread out a little bit and see who was there, and you'd see fathers and sons and daughters and just friends and people. It was all so peaceful and deliberate, or, you know, people are really, I think that was it for me, just being able to kind of pick out the people and get an idea of who was there, and you could kind of see why they were there.
I would assume the next day, but did you get to see how the media covered the march?
Oh yeah.
What did you think of their coverage?
I remember a lot of focus on the number and the number of places and countries where people were marching. And to me that was really encouraging, that it wasn't just, I mean, it was a huge mass of people in DC, but, you know, my sisters were in New York and they were telling me about it there. And there were people in Atlanta, friends in Atlanta, who got poured down rain on them for the march, but they were out there. And all these countries, and sometimes it would be like a handful of people, but in this country that's like so remote, and like, why do they care about Trump? But they do. And so that was amazing.
Which media outlets did you actually choose to watch coverage?
I usually go to my phone, and it was mostly not video, it was mostly written media, but Washington Post and the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. I try to throw in the Wall Street Journal just in case there's spin on some of the liberal stuff I read, because some of the liberal stuff I read I can tell there's spin, so kind of straighten that out with a little bit of Wall Street Journal. Not the opinion section, because that's awful, but the regular reporting is usually okay and worth reading, so mostly those.
Yeah, okay. So you did march with the marchers,
Yeah.
and where did you end up when you went on the march?
No DC well enough to answer that. Oh, we did the whole march, although I'm sure it wasn't the planned route, because we did go through the mall. I don't know where we ended up. I think there was a stage at the end, wasn't there? But by the end it didn't really matter, like the point was made, so we went and tried to find some pizza.
And so that night did you stay in DC?
Yeah.
With your friend?
Yeah.
What were you talking about when you went back to her house?
The thing is that we understand each other already, and we can talk about Trump and the policies and the disaster that's coming, but like, it's already there and we all know it, and so we didn't really talk about that. We were catching up, these are some old friends, and one of them I talk to pretty regularly, but the other I don't, so it was looking at pictures and, hearing about our kids and our family and this normal stuff.
So I guess you drove back the next day then?
Yeah.
And so when you got back to Atlanta, did you talk about it at all with your husband?
That was tricky. He had a rough weekend. He did have kind of a bad work schedule then, and it was a lot for me to ask for him to take time off and hang with the kids all weekend. I mean, I have 2 jobs and I'm in school, so he is like, in the middle of the night my kids usually actually go to him, so it's not that he, felt like he's babysitting, but it was a rough weekend. It rained all weekend and had the kids inside, and he doesn't really see the point of marches, he doesn't think that is really a vehicle for social change. So I think that he felt some resentment about my having left for a weekend, so we didn't talk about it too much.
Did you ever talk to your dad about it?
No.
Was your dad aware that you went?
I don't know. Probably. Probably because my mom and sisters knew that I went.
So when you got back to work the next week, did you find other people who had actually gone on marches?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, most people had marched here, and, you know, there's all pictures of them just waterlogged, basically, soaked through. But they were, I think everyone had a really positive experience. And what surprised me was the number of people who thanked us for going. Because I wasn't, you know, I didn't think of it that way. It wasn't like a favor you do for somebody, or it wasn't, yeah, that would just seem strange to me. It was sort of like a privilege to get to go.
For sure. So, here we are now. It's June.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a few months in. How do you feel about the way this new administration has been carrying out policies, or just behaving, just like getting their agenda sort of on the table? How do you feel about all of it?
It's exhausting. And scary. It's hard to keep up with it. And I read the news way too much, but it's really depressing to have so many people just put in position. You know, any cabinet position is filled with somebody who's not only ignorant about that position, but against that position. Like wants to dismantle that part of the government. Education secretary. It's embarrassing and shameful. And scary. Like the real life repercussions of the things that he's trying to do. He's trying to do at breakneck speed, and then like the actual, I don't know, it's hard to sort out what's actual, you know, since it's all executive orders and not really any laws passed. But there's this kind of looming cloud of, you know, maybe we're going to take away healthcare from everybody, and, you know, stop insuring people with pre-existing conditions, and the environmental disaster that's happening, and like, it's like, why are these things bothering you? Why are they on your agenda? It's bizarre. To me, it's bizarre. The things that he's done internationally lately, I mean, for states to be taking it in their own hands, like taking care of the environment, is, I guess, like, part of me is like, maybe that's what they wanted. Maybe they just don't want the federal government in charge, although I don't think that's been the narrative. The narrative is, you know, that there's no problem, nothing to see here, there's no problem, let's take this apart, let's take this, you know, the EPA apart. I don't think this is really a states' rights kind of thing, but maybe, you know, I'm glad the states are picking it up. It seems like a terribly inefficient way to address issues that affect all of us, not state by state, so it's confusing and depressing.
And how do you feel like the Republican Party in general has sort of responded to his behaviour?
Again, just confusing. I mean, if they want to have someone totally backwards in power, they've got Pence standing in the wings, and I don't know what's holding them back from. I don't know a lot of people who think that would be better, to have Pence in charge, but maybe he would be more predictable, or I don't know if there would be anything better about having somebody who's more methodical and has some self-control in that position. It might be worse. But I don't understand. I remember seeing a picture, an article about Paul Ryan, last time he ran for office, and you know, he was at a soup kitchen and he had his sleeves rolled up washing dishes that were already clean. And I thought, what a weenie. You know, what a terrible person. Like, you can't find any way to help out in a real kind of, like, what a poser. He's a terrible person. So the whole lineup behind Trump, like, there's not any even, like, a good possibility. There's nothing, it's just kind of hopeless. I mean, yeah, maybe there would be somebody who would be less of a loose cannon, but I don't understand why they don't try to rein in some kind of leadership. Why winning is the only thing that matters instead of any kind of principle. They really just care about the 1%. I mean, that's what it seems to come down to. It's hard to imagine that.
It's very strange times.
Yeah, and it kind of demands a high level of compassion where you can kind of understand, you know, these people must have been neglected or abused. Like, what is wrong with them? Like, why do they think this is okay? Why do they think this is going to work? And can we do something to help them?
Well, that's very compassionate.
People. What's that?
That's very compassionate of you.
I mean, you try, right? I mean, the Pope's on it, Dalai Lama's on it, they're all on it. And that's really, like, that's all we have now is just patience and, you know, donating John Ossoff and, you know.
Talk to me, you're not within the 6th district?
I'm not in, no.
But you've been watching?
Yeah.
How's this making you feel? What do you hope's going to happen?
Oh my goodness. I mean, if we could have the more people we can have in the House, the more people are going to be forced to work together, maybe, and make some kind of compromise, make some kind of sense, some kind of reasonable policy at any point. So, yeah, he and people like him are the hope that maybe this won't have to be for entire years of such torture. And
his message is very conciliatory. It's very sort of like reasoned and let's talk across the aisle.
I think I think he seems pretty genuine, and, you know, this isn't anti-Trump, this is like, here's what I believe in and maybe we can work together and...
Let's all be adults in the room.
Let's all be adults. What a crazy idea. Yeah.
Since the march, have you gone to any other protests, or have you joined an indivisible group, or have you written postcards or anything like that?
I haven't. I have the app, the Women's March app, and I've written some letters and emails. That's mostly, I'm doing a dissertation now, and but everybody's got their things. You know, everybody has their life, and you prioritize. And I write letters. I can do it at weird times of the day. And
well, you do have like a dissertation's a pretty intense thing.
And I think I used up. You know, I would like my marriage just to survive, and I think I've used up. I don't think my husband would be really that supportive of me taking the kids to a march, and I think I used up my time off. You
called in that ticket.
Called in, exactly.
So it's like we have a long time ahead of us with
Yeah.
this administration. Do you think that there's been a lot of momentum built up?
Mm-hmm.
There really do you think that we can maintain that momentum?
I hope so. I mean, I think I read something the other day that the calls to senators are back to their pre-Trump levels. So I think that people do get kind of worn out. I think that's the reality of it. But I think that maybe if they're not calling, they're still, you know, people are, I mean, how many people do I know who do live in 6th District who are going to Ossoff rallies and events and making sure that they vote? And I think people are kind of looking at the vote as what we have have, which isn't enough. I mean, it's these individual things really matter, and if our representatives need to hear from us, then we need to not slow down on that. But so I do think momentum is slowed. I also think, the Democratic Party we have such some really amazing people in leadership, but nobody who is, we need like an acceptable voice, like one leader who's gonna drive the rally, and we don't have that. So
it's an important part of getting going, I think.
Yeah.
You were talking about sort of momentum and how tired people get. Do you think is there anything that people can do not to get burned out with all of this?
I've thought about having a little more structured approach. I have my to-do list, and I have a lot going on. I have a lot of, if I build in structure, if I put it on a to-do list, I'll do it. And I thought maybe just 5 things a month, just pick 5 people a month who I'm gonna call or write to. It's tricky because the things to care about are every day, but just pick a day of the week maybe, and just, pick the top news headline, and I've thought about maybe just having that kind of structure, which I think some people are doing, not necessarily the way that I said it, but in keeping on the Women's March app, or I don't know.
Well, we've got a long ways ahead of us.
Yeah.
Looking back to the march, was there anything that surprised you? That was unexpected? You were there.
I was pleasantly surprised with how peaceful it was. I did think there would be some back and forth and more protesters, especially because DC is so political, and we're in DC, and it was the day after the inauguration, so I was really surprised at how peaceful it was. I was surprised at how many kids were there. Again, pleasantly surprised, because it wasn't an inappropriate place. It was a totally appropriate place for them. I really had wished that I brought mine. I was surprised at the sort of lack of response from the administration. I mean, it seems like Trump is pretty good at ignoring what he doesn't like, but still would sort of expect a little something. Just a, acknowledgement. We hear you, we know that some things are important to you, but it was the day after, I think, that they started to go after Planned Parenthood. I mean, just right away. So that was surprising. It's telling. They don't care.
If you were to meet a person who's considering going to a march like that in the future, any march, what would your advice be to them?
Well, definitely a water supply and more snacks. Good walking shoes. I lost both of my toenails at the march, and I have those hiking boots for years. Yeah, really disgusting actually, but take it for the team. I think get a good sign together, because I think even though I really wish that I would have had a good sign. I thought about ahead of time what kind of sign that I would make, and then it was just, things were really busy and we didn't have that together with traveling and stuff, and other people did. But the ones that made it into the media, it was great. They are encouraging, and they covered all kinds of topics, and it's kind of proof that we're not there because we're protesting, you know, the electoral process or, you know, some of the things that the conservative media said or that conservative people said about why we were there, sore losers, and you know, only would be happy with Hillary, and the signs are proof otherwise. So they're really well done. They're thoughtful, and they cover all kinds of different things that we should care about.
You're very creative as well.
Yeah.
As all the questions I've had, is there anything you wish I'd asked you that you didn't get to talk about?
I don't think so.
Well, then I thank you very, very much for being willing to be interviewed for this project.
No, I'm really happy to do it.
It's great.